Many of the young black men and some women who voted for Trump are going to regret it because he played them. He played them like fools. But he wasn't alone. There were blacks who helped him play them. But mark my word, if Trump follows through with his promises in the implementation of Project 2025, I assure you, black men, young black men, will bear the brunt of what Trump has in store. Mark my word. Stay with me. Hello, everybody. I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, we bring you at least one legal analysis of some trending story regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you'll get notified every time we upload one of these powerful and informative videos. Before we get into this material today, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice, so you'll have a tool in your hand that will teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy now. So yes, as I said in the opener, the black men who voted for Trump, and some women, will regret it. Because if he keeps his promises, and from everything that I can tell, he intends to keep all of his promises, including implementing many anti-black policies, many of which come from Project 2025. If he follows through, like I believe he will, I assure you that young black men will suffer the worst. Now, I'm going to look at this, and quite frankly, let me just tell you up front, I'm teed off. I'm teed off because I am basically eyewitness for the past few months. I've been warning and warning and warning and warning. I've been putting it out there. As I watch, especially young black men, and no matter what I said, no matter what even former President Barack Obama said, and many others, those young black men were determined to jump off this cliff. And now they're about to pay a price. The problem is, we're all going to pay a price. And by no means, young black men are not the only reason we're dealing with another 4 years of Trump. It's mainly white men. They're the ones who voted for Trump overwhelmingly. But they needed just a few young black men to vote for Trump as well, especially in battleground states. Without that, I don't think that Kamala would have lost this race, and we would be facing what we're about to face, an avalanche, a tidal wave, a tsunami of anti-black policies. Now, when I first started doing these videos, you would sit and watch these videos for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, because of the content. This is one of those videos. This is one of those videos that need to be watched from start to finish, with the family sitting around. It's especially important that you have the family sitting around because these pro-black imposters are targeting younger black people. And they need to hear the other side from me, a civil rights attorney, who actually know the ins and outs of the voting rights law, in the civil rights law, in the fair housing law, who actually litigate these cases. Hear from me instead of someone on YouTube who doesn't know jack about these laws other than what they pull up from the internet. So sit your son, sit your grandson, your granddaughter, your daughter down, and you all watch the video and explain to them. Don't disregard the video because I'm an older guy. I've heard so much of that. You know, these young men, just like they did Obama, who don't want to hear you, and that's why they are that's why they're screwing up the way they are. Make them listen, you parents, you grandparents, because what we're about to experience under a second Trump administration will be awful. All right, let's get into it. The first thing I want to do is look at some election results. All right, some election results. They sort of prove what I'm saying here. All right, let me pull it up, and we're going to look at some election results. All right. Now, this is AP Votecast, How America Voted in 2024. Black women, 89% voted for Kamala. That was down from 93% in 2020 who voted for Biden. Trump saw an increase of black women voters from 6% in 2020 to 10% in 2024. And my question is, why? Why, sisters? Why vote for a white supremacist? Why? Black men, 74% voted for Kamala, which was down from 87% who voted for Joe Biden. Trump saw a huge increase from 12% in 2020 up to 24% in 2024. Why? Why would you, young black men, vote for a white supremacist? Now, I'm going to answer my own question here in a moment. White women, this is not surprising. 46% voted for Kamala, which is down 1 point from the 47% who voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Trump saw an increase from 52% to 53%, a 1 point increase from 2020 to 2024. White men, it's really no surprise. 38% voted for Kamala, down from the 40% who voted for Joe Biden. So neither one of them carried white male voters. And that's understandable because Trump represents white male hegemony. That's what he's fighting for. He's fighting for angry, aggrieved white men. He's not fighting for black men or black women. And you shouldn't have missed why Trump has such strong white male supporters. Because he's fighting for them. He's made it clear. Latino women, 59% voted for Kamala, which sounds great. But it's down from the 66% who voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And Trump saw an increase of Latino women voters from the 32% that he had in 2020 to the 39% he saw this time in 2024. And again, my question would be, why, when he told you he campaigned Latino women on deporting Latino people? And we all remember just a couple of weeks ago at the Madison Square Gardens, they made fun of you. They ridiculed the Hispanic community. And yet you voted for this man. And now some of you got family members who will be deported because of your vote. Latino men, 49% voted for Kamala, which is down from the 59% who voted for Joe Biden, 10 points down. And Trump saw an increase of Latino male voters up from the 38% that he got in 2020 to the 48% that he got this go round. And I have the same question for you. Why? Why? Well, I know the answer. Now, more election data. Trump got 76,970,200 votes, which is beneath the 50% threshold. So most of the country did not vote for him. But enough voted for him to give him the victory. Now, I know that there are many out there who say, well, he cheated. Him and Elon Musk and so on. And by the way, there are no claims of cheating from that side. And we know, had he lost, that's all we'd be hearing about right now. But there's no cheating when they win. Kamala got 74,479,255 votes, which is about 2.5 million less than Trump. And 7 million less than what Biden got in 2020. So many of you had a serious issue voting for a black woman. Despite you cutting off your nose from your face, despite that, you could not overcome voting for this black woman. That's bottom line. Bottom line. You Hispanic voters, Latino voters, it makes no sense. Black women, it makes no sense. Black men, she even rolled out an agenda for you. Trump didn't promise you anything except for stop and frisk. And prosecutorial immunity for police officers who shoot black men. And yet you voted for him. You voted for him. Despite so many things, so many ways that he showed you he cares nothing about you. Nothing. Now let's look at his cabinet picks. This drives the point home. This drives the point home. And I'm not talking about just the fact that he has only one black person in his cabinet, Scott Turner. I'm not talking about that. And I doubt very seriously, I don't know Mr. Turner, first time I've ever seen him. But I doubt very seriously He's in opposition to anything Trump tells him to do. And I already know what Trump wants to do over at HUD, because he tried to get Ben Carson to get it done, and Ben definitely worked with him to gut an extremely piece of important regulation of the Fair Housing Act. Ben Carson tried, but he was stopped. And I'm sure Mr. Turner will do the same. Otherwise, Trump would have never, ever nominated him. Okay? But my point is, these people here will do nothing to lift black people. Nothing. Do you think Pam Bundy, the AG nominee, is going to do anything to help lift black people? Do you think Sean Duffy is going to do anything to try to help you, black man? Do you think John Ratcliffe? Do you think Doug Collins? Do you think Tulsi Gabbard is going to do anything for you? Marco Rubio? Really? These are the people that you voted in. I assure you that Kamala's picks would be a whole lot more pro-black, and I mean really pro-black, not like these pro-black imposters, but progressive blacks who would be working to continue Kamala and Joe's legacy, powerful legacy of the many things they did for the African American community. A whole list of things they did to empower the black community, from student loan forgiveness to record historical HBCU funding, to small business administration loan historical numbers for black business owners. And I especially like this one thing they did where they took away the rule that prohibited the SBA from loaning money to people who were convicted felons. They got rid of that rule. Now watch Trump go into office with this crowd of people, let me pull them up again, and everything that Biden and Harris did to empower, to benefit the African American community. Trump is going to sign executive orders on day one, rolling them back. Everything. And you, black men under the age of 50, 20% of you, it is predicted. Your support of him went from 12% in 2020 up to 24%. And I guarantee you, you cannot articulate a good reason, a good rational reason for doing that. You can't give one good, rational policy reason for doing that. So yes, the election results and Trump's cabinet picks prove me right. Trump played some of you young black men for total fools because he got your vote, and he's not going to do anything for you. His whole 4 years in office will be to protect white male dominance over you, and yet you voted for him. And I tried to tell you, and Obama told you, and many others told you, and I still don't like the way you dealt with Obama. Former president, constitutional law scholar, former senator, former state senator, law review editor for Harvard, the first black one, a brilliant man who dealt 8 years with Trump and all these conservatives that you just voted for. He knows them. And he simply said to you, I know you're not going to vote for the man who has spent his life denigrating black people. I know you're not going to do that. And y'all's response was, don't talk down to us. Who you think you are? Who you think you are? Again, it was like watching somebody stand on the precipice of a cliff and you try to talk them down and they get mad and angry with you. Who you talking to? Who you talking to? It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Craziest thing I've ever seen. So yes, Trump increased his support of young black men despite Trump openly promising to reinstate stop and frisk. That's where they throw you. Police just, without reasonable suspicion, probable cause or anything, just throw you, black men, up against the wall because you're going to be targeted. You're going to be targeted. And then you're going to be thrown in jail. Watch what happens. How do I know this? Because for almost 20 years, I have represented hundreds, if not thousands, of you young black men. And the people you just elected are the very same type of prosecutors and judges who support Trump that I have had to fight, oftentimes to save your lives, to save your freedom. They despise you, young black man, especially out of every group in the country. You, young black man, these Trump supporters despise you. They consider you despicable. They despise you. They hate you. They fear you. And you now think it's a wise, bright idea to support them. Some of which because you think Trump sent you a stimulus check. Despite Trump openly promising to reinstate stop and frisk policies, you yet supported him. Despite him promising to give police officers prosecutorial immunity. Do you know what that means? That means that if a police officer who has prosecutorial immunity shoots and kills a black man, young black men, who are 5 times more likely to be shot by the police, they will not be indicted, cannot be indicted, will not be prosecuted, will not be held accountable for your death, or your buddy's death, or your father's death, or your son's death. Nor can you hold them accountable in the civil court because they already have immunity, qualified immunity. Despite him wanting to unleash the military on the George Floyd protesters, they had to hold him back from doing that. You yet increased your support for him. Those protesters were out there protesting the lynching of George Floyd, a black man. Those protesters were out there, in other words, fighting for you. Don't you remember when Trump gave a speech and said that Colin Kaepernick and others like him should be fired? He told the coaches in the NFL league to fire those SOBs.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Now, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell released a statement just a few minutes ago. The NFL and our players are at our best when we help create a sense of unity in our country and our culture. There is no better example than the amazing response from our clubs and players to the terrible natural disasters we've experienced over the last month. Divisive comments like these demonstrate an unfortunate lack of respect for the NFL, our great game, and all of our players, and a failure to understand the overwhelming force for good our clubs and players represent in our communities.
All because Colin Kaepernick was bringing attention to the fact that cops kill you, black man, young black man especially, and you increase your support for Trump? Make it make sense. If there was a black council somewhere that had the authority to hold folks accountable for this type of thing, you could not explain to that council why you did what you did. I have heard all sorts of stuff from, he says what's on his mind. Trump says what's on his mind. Despite him saying something racist about us or you or black women, you like the fact that he says what's on his mind. Despite not promising one tangible on the campaign trail for black men. Not one, not one. Now, a lot of these pro-black imposters that you listen to, they have been saying for years. And I'm going to show you in just a moment where all this stuff comes from about not voting and this. I'm going to show you where that's coming from. You need to hang around for that. The man I'm going to show you started all this disinformation. But not promising you not one tangible, not one, nothing for your benefit, nothing for you, nothing for your children, nothing for your community, nothing. In fact, he kept saying all sorts of racist things about you. And yet you increase your support for him. Despite Trump making, again, overtly racist statements about black people, for example, we eat dogs and cats. You increase your support for him. Despite Trump seeking the death penalty, advocating for the death penalty for 5 young black teens, 4 actually and 1 Hispanic. And he and none of them had committed any crimes. They were in fact exonerated. One of these pro-black imposters said he didn't care about that. Despite Trump promising white people reparations or retribution, whatever you want to call it, if a black person receives some benefit from any program, Trump said that he wants a white person to get reparations in those cases. Despite him refusing to rent to black people in the 70s, your support went up for him. Despite him opposing DEI and affirmative action programs, you literally increased your support for him. And while we're talking about DEI programs, let me bring up some data. Because that's a pretty big deal. Let's look at this. Eliminating DEI programs will affect black unemployment. According to Zippia.com, in 2021, 62% of U.S. tech jobs were held by white employees, while 20% were held by Asian Americans, 8% were held by Latino or Latinx American employees, and only 7% were held by black employees. We're always at the bottom of the employment barrel and at the top of the unemployment barrel. Always. A 2020 Washington Post Ipsos poll found that black and Hispanic employees were more likely to be laid off compared to their white counterparts. Layoffs disproportionately impact black workers and will only exacerbate the racial disparities and disparities that already exist within tech. A 2023 McKinsey report indicates that the black tech talent gap is expected to widen in the next decade. Black employees face considerable challenges in the labor market, structural barriers, have created more hurdles for Black job seekers who face higher unemployment rates and fewer job opportunities, among other systemic issues. This is Bloomberg. Walmart's CEO said the retailer was, quote, not as diverse as we want to be and aspire to be, close quote. That was before they recently Walmart announced that they were gutting all their DEI initiatives. While Nike Inc. and Lowe's were among many companies that joined 110, a group that aims to get 1 million Black employees middle-class jobs within a decade. All that because of DEI initiatives. What did Trump do? He fought DEI initiatives, and he continues to fight DEI initiatives. You know why? Because his white male base believe that those DEI hires and initiatives and programs take jobs from them. So in other words, anytime a company hire you, young Black man, there are white guys out there who resent that, who resent you. That's who Trump represents. And yet, you voted for him. Again, twice as many. Against a Black woman who would never do that. And don't tell me this garbage about Kamala Harris sent a whole bunch of Black men to jail or to prison. That's bogus. That's disinformation. If that were true, if Kamala Harris had targeted Black men as a Black man and a criminal defense attorney, I would have opposed her. That is not true. That's disinformation. Kamala even wrote a book about how to keep Black men out of prison, out of the system. Let's go back. I told you I'm teed. While many of the specific goals were for several years in the future, Bloomberg's analysis shows progress. Meta, which is Facebook, Microsoft, Pepsi, and Lowe's were among 39 firms that increased the number of Black workers across all the top high-paying job categories, professionals, managers, and executives. All this occurred because of DEI programs that were put in place after Mr. Floyd was lynched. Trump fought every one of those initiatives tooth and nail. Him and his administration on some sham about merit. Now, because he's coming back to office, those companies are now running scared. I did a video on this. They're now running scared of Trump and his surrogates coming after them. And is forcing them now to get rid of these programs, and he would not be in the position to do that if you had not voted for him. Most recently, companies have invested billions in diversity and inclusion initiatives to improve these long-standing inequities and increase representation of marginalized workers. That would be you. Data shows the most significant of these investments, particularly in tech, came in the wake of the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement. In most cases, these initiatives showed promising results. For example, before Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter in late 2022, the company received positive press for hiring more Black employees. That was pre-Elon Musk. In U.S. locations, the number went from 6.9% to 9.4%. All because of DEI initiatives. The same year, the U.S.-based telecommunications Conglomerate Cisco documented 120% increase in black vice presidents, beating diversity targets that originally that was set for 2023. That's according to the BBC. Trump forced him and MAGA forced these companies to get rid of DEI programs. And now he's going back in office. And again, it has a lot to do with the fact that you supported him. You voted for him. You jumped off the cliff. You gave him the knife to stab you in the back. You gave it to him. An analysis of publicly available data for 2022 conducted by workforce intelligence firm Revlior Labs show that Black and Latino workers represented 7.42% and 11.49% respectively of the tech layoffs in 2022. Look at that. Trump going back in office is going to increase Black unemployment. You may say, well, hold on a minute. Black unemployment was the lowest under Trump in his first administration. Well, it was for a minute, only because Trump inherited a great economy from Obama. And then he messed that economy up by mishandling COVID, which drove inflation and unemployment way up until the Biden-Harris administration now got them under control. And by the way, let me say this. Once again, Trump is inheriting a great economy. Contrary to popular belief, he is inheriting a great economy and he's going to take credit for it. But just remember, the economy that Biden is about to give him is way better than the economy that he gave Biden. Let's go back. Additionally, Walmart will no longer consider race and gender as a litmus test to improve diversity when it offers supplier contracts. So Black businesses who supply Walmart with this or with that or that and this, now will start losing those contracts. Those contracts will not be renewed in the future because of the pressure that Trump is putting on these corporations to get rid of DEI, to protect white male dominance. The company said it didn't have quotas and will not do so going forward. It won't be gathering demographic data when determining financing eligibility for those grants. Walmart also said it wouldn't renew a racial equity center that was established through a 5-year, $100 million philanthropic commitment from the company with a mandate to, according to its website, address the root causes of gaps in outcomes experienced by Black and African American people in education, health, finance, and criminal justice systems. This is heartbreaking. Walmart has set aside $100 million with the mandate to address the root causes of issues that affect you, young Black man, more than anyone in this country. They dropped all of that out of fear for Trump. And now that Trump is coming back into office, more and more and more companies, Walmart being the largest, have set aside, have stopped these DEI programs that were in place to benefit you. Trump played you for a fool. And these people here will ensure that all of those DEI programs are gone, that there will be nothing done to benefit you specifically, black man, nothing to address the issues that you face. And I know the issues you face. I know the issues you face. I am a black man. I have been a young black man. I have raised a young black man, my wife and I, our son, our 30-year-old son. I was a teacher. I'm now an attorney. I am a preacher. I know the issues we face as black men. You just made them worse by voting for white supremacists. Why are young black men so gullible to this garbage that Trump and MAGA are out here spilling? But not just them. We'll see in just a moment. But again, why? Why are they so gullible? Well, number one, you need to study what white supremacy is. You don't know what white supremacy is. You young black men, you don't understand our history. You don't know what we have been fighting and what we continue to fight. You think this is all changed. You're being told that there is no longer any white supremacy. Systemic racism no longer exists. You've been told that that's just something we older blacks push. And you all got this thing figured out now. You and this so-called new black media. Y'all got it figured out. Y'all know how to deal with this. What you're doing is capitulating, acquiescing, bowing down to white supremacy. That's not being an alpha male. As I said in a previous video, bowing down to white supremacy is definitely not being an alpha male. You're being played. You're being played. Let's go back over to the next screen. You need to understand what white supremacy is, because as Nelson Fuller, I believe his name is, he said one of the most powerful statements I've ever heard. If you don't know what white supremacy is and how it works, what you think you know will confuse you. Powerful words. Why else are you so gullible to white supremacists? Because you're low information voters. Principally because you don't read. Now, I understand that the public school system, that's why I wrote my book, in many ways has failed you. Because many of you, the last statistic that I looked at, only 8% of you can read on grade level. And I'm not talking down to you. I'm a high school dropout. This type of thing that I'm calling out now was going on back when I was in middle school and elementary school. The education system, the public education system, is systemically racist. And it fails us as black men, which is why you got to do what you got to do to become proficient at reading. And you know how you do that? You just start reading. I haven't always been a proficient reader. Again, I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade. But I will say this, I was always a reader. I would go when my buddies were out doing things, I would sneak away from them and go to the public library and read books. Just start reading. It's the reason why we created the BAR's summer reading program. And by the way, we're about to make it a year-round program, because when I started doing these videos, I was confronted. And of course, I was a teacher, so I remember the low reading level of African-American males. And that follows young brothers right out into the workforce. So Trump knows he can say whatever, because a lot of young black men don't have the wherewithal to read, to educate themselves, and to know they're being lied to. I got to speak blunt because we got to get this problem corrected before 2026. These pro-black imposters know that they can tell you anything. Like when they were telling you, don't vote unless you get reparations. And all the time they were hoping you wouldn't vote or vote for Trump, knowing that Trump would never approve reparations. So what is the result of advice not to vote unless you get reparations? The result of that, from you supporting the anti-reparation party, is that you never vote. And if you never vote, what happens? The GOP continues to win and continues to implement anti-black policies. And so many of you, to the hundreds of thousands, have flocked to those YouTube channels, getting that disinformation. Why else so gullible? Well, even Trump said young black men love him because they consider him to be a thug like they are, so they can relate to him. Let me tell you something. You have nothing in common with Donald Trump. Nothing. First of all, he's white. Second of all, he was born rich. Third of all, he's a former president and the president-elect now. Fourth of all, he put 3 members on the United States Supreme Court and a whole bunch of judges on federal courts across the country. You have nothing in common with him. And it's the reason why now he's getting his cases dropped all over the place. You're not getting yours dropped. I've represented you. It's really difficult to get pardons and cases sealed and all of that stuff that you all be calling my office asking about. Well, you're supporting the party who makes it even harder for black men to get their records expunged and so forth. But Trump can get it because, as I said, he's a rich white dude, former president, president-elect. You have nothing in common with Donald Trump. Nothing. Just because he comes into the barbershop and sit down and talk with you, or send some black conservatives to the barbershop to talk to you, that makes you think you have something in common with Trump? You're playing the fool. And now, you're going to regret it. And some of the blame lies on the Democratic Party as well. For one, they've done a poor job talking to you black men and addressing the systemic racism that you and me and black men face. They do a better job than the GOP. They are responsible for civil rights legislation that makes our lives so much better. But there's so much more to be done. But we got to give them credit for what they have done. Now, we're going to hear from Claude Anderson in just a moment. And he's going to tell you the Democratic Party has done nothing. Just wait. I'm going to play him. I'm going to play his video in just a second. I want you to hear this because I'm going to refute a lot of what he says. Some of what he says is true, but most of it has caused a lot of damage in our community because a whole lot of people picked up what Claude said and started repeating it. Which brings me to this next point, which is a lot of you brothers have been deceived. You've been misled. You've been misinformed by these pro-black imposters. Again, who many are really quoting things that Claude Anderson has said. Let me give you an example.
Secondly, the Democratic Party has never explained to black people in this country that they're going to practice politics based on the simple premise of what politics is in place for. Politics is a process that decides who's going to get what benefits out of life and who's going to get it and how they're going to get it. And yet the Democratic Party has never told black folk that. And so what you should be voting for out there is not for a political candidate based on his personality. well, I like this candidate for this reason, I like that for that reason. You should be saying, I want to pick the person who's going to provide the most benefits to black people. They're not going to provide any benefits.
If that is the standard, I don't understand why Claude Anderson, an intelligent man, has a doctorate, is an author, as I am. I too am an educated man. I too have been around the block. So I don't understand why he is saying these things, like the Democratic Party's never done anything for black people. If it wasn't for the Democratic Party, and he's going to explain in just a moment which Democratic Party I'm talking about, not the Democratic Party, the first one that supported slavery, but the very one he's going to explain in a second, the Democratic Party that stood after the Dixiecrats in the Democratic Party went over into the GOP party. That I agree with him about. But that Democratic Party that was left standing after the Southern strategy, it was that Democratic Party that gave us the Civil Rights Act of 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, which the GOP has essentially gutted. We're trying to get it restored. The Fair Housing Act of 68. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act. I've talked to you about all of these in previous Project 2025 videos that I've done. I started talking to you about these things months ago. So I don't understand why Claude is saying that the Democratic Party has done nothing for blacks. Our jobs wouldn't be protected today had it not been for the Civil Rights Act of 64. We couldn't vote. We literally couldn't vote except for the Voting Rights Act of 65, which Democrats passed. I don't understand why he says these things. I'm confused. I'm baffled. It's as if those things are no longer important. But the only reason we can live where we live is because of the Fair Housing Act. It's the only reason. Again, when people come to my office and ask me to file lawsuits on their behalf because someone has discriminated against them in housing, where do you think I look? To the Fair Housing Act. And why do you think there is no redlining anymore or restrictive covenants? You know what a restrictive covenant is? It is when white people were putting in deeds prohibition against selling houses to black people to keep the neighborhood white. That was done away with because of the Fair Housing Act and other Supreme Court cases. That has had a profound impact on the black community. I don't understand why Claude is saying and demonizing the Democratic Party. And I'm not a Democrat, but the truth is the truth. The facts are the facts. I don't get it. I don't understand. Help me understand, Dr. Anderson. And now a lot of younger blacks have taken what Dr. Anderson has said here and is spreading it, and it's doing tremendous damage because it opens the door for Trump and Trump-like folks, the GOP, these white conservatives, to win elections and, man, put the proverbial noose around our necks and reestablish Jim Crow laws. I don't get it. Let's go back.
To black folk, why are you voting? You go to the supermarket and you go in there and you starve to death. And you need some groceries. You go to the supermarket, walk up to the cashier and give him $50. Say, I'm buying $50 worth of food, and you don't have to give me anything for it. Just take the $50 and I'm going back by my business. See, that's what the Democrats are doing. And black people don't understand that the Democratic Party has never, ever done anything in the history of this nation to be effectively do something for black folk. They didn't do it when they were old.
I don't get that. I just told you, Claude Anderson knows which party passed the legislation that we still live by. I don't get it. I don't, it's just factually inaccurate. It is literally like saying the sky is red. Just pull it up. Lyndon Baines Johnson, a Democrat, passed those pieces of legislation. He signed them into law. And then he did this war on poverty, the Great Society. He did that to benefit black people. Black folks went out of poverty. It was the biggest increase of blacks moving into the middle class in American history because of the Great Society policies. Now, white conservatives will attack Lyndon Johnson and all of that, but Claude is not a white conservative. I don't know. I thought he was a Democrat. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand. But this doesn't make any sense. I have his book. I don't get it. Now he's going to explain the difference between the old Democratic Party and the new Democratic Party. And part of this I agree with. Listen to this.
Democratic Party. They were the old Democratic Party up to about the late 1950s. Then all of a sudden, when black folk left the old Republican Party to come into become Democrats, the old Democrats called Yellow Dog Democrats, they left the party and went over and joined the Republican Party to stay away from black folk. So the present day Democratic Republican Party is nothing but the old Dixiecrats from the South. And now they're going around bragging about they're conservative.
That's absolutely right. He's right about that. The GOP, the Republican Party, the one that some of you all voted for, is nothing but the Dixiecrats from the old Democratic Party. Their descendants, their children, their grandchildren. He's absolutely right about that. But I want you to remember that. So he just said the Republican Party ain't going to do anything for black people. It is the old Dixiecrats who supported slavery back during slavery. Remember that for something else that he goes on to say.
And black folk are saying, well, I'm going to vote for him because he's less conservative, or he's more conservative, he's liberal. Neither have the liberals ever done anything for black folk. Just like the conservatives. Conservatives have never done anything for black folk. And they have no intentions to do anything for black folk. So what you need to do then is to go back and say now.
He's right about that. Conservatives have never done anything for black folks, and they don't intend to. The party that you all voted for, the GOP, MAGA. He's right about that. He's wrong about liberal Democrats doing nothing for black people. Because again, just look at, for example, Joe Biden is considered a liberal. He's more centrist than some liberals in the Democratic Party. But look at all the things that he did. Look at the stuff that Jimmy Carter did. Okay? Look at the stuff Bill Clinton did. The Democratic Party, since at least the 60s, has been the party that has been more pro-black than, as Claude Anderson said, than the white conservative party. So why he would then turn around and say the Democrats have never, ever done anything for black, it's weird. I don't get it. I really don't. All right, let's go back.
Play this game to win. And if you're going to play to win, look at my book, Powernomics. Go to chapter, I think it's chapter 7, that talked about becoming independent and building your own independent party. Neither party is going to do anything for you. As far as the present day candidates, if I was picking one and I'm not going to vote, I quit voting when I found that neither party going to do anything for black folk. Out of all the candidates.
Well, there you go right there. You see, he says he quit voting once he found out neither party is going to do anything for black people. And that's what a lot of these younger blacks picked up. And that's what they're out there saying. Vote the couch, vote the couch, vote the couch. Well, what did voting the couch, what has it gotten us so far? What has it gotten us so far? What has voting the couch gotten us? Since this message has been put out there since probably about 2015, I know I'm getting to this late, right? I'm Johnny come lately. I wasn't on YouTube out there doing all this stuff. I was practicing law. I was fighting against systemic racism. So we just started this whole thing in less than a year ago. So they have been putting this stuff out there now for years. And it is the reason why young black men, now many of them, consider the Democratic Party to be as evil as the GOP. And it's just not true. I have huge disagreements with the Democratic Party and the GOP. I'm neither. I'm not a Democrat or Republican because they both tee me off in different ways. But when it comes to the sole issue of who is the best caretaker of civil rights, it's not even disputable. It's not even disputable. That is the Democratic Party for the last, at least since the 60s. It's not even disputable. Just do a little history research. Is the Democratic Party perfect? No. No. In fact, I think had the Democratic Party done a better job, Kamala Harris would not have lost. No, it's not. It's nowhere near perfect. I got big issues with the Democratic Party. But as Claude Anderson said, I'm definitely not supporting the GOP. Now, I've told you in the past, I'm 62 years old. I have been a Democrat. I have been a Republican. Today, I'm smack dab exactly where I'm supposed to be, an independent. I'm not a loyalist, an operative, a trill or whatever. What's that word? A trill or something they say. I am none of that for either party. And Claude Anderson's ideal about starting an all-black party, that sounds so good, right? But is it pragmatic? We're about 40 million deep in this country, which makes us about 11, 12%. And if we got every black person registered to vote and registered as whatever the party name that Claude Anderson has in mind, I'm just not sure. I'm not sold on the fact that we would have enough numbers to compete with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. My suggestion is that we vote in elections for the Democrats right now in overwhelming numbers. You see, we've never done that. We have never seen a large, overwhelming, huge majority of us voting in an election. Now, we block vote. Sure, we pretty much, since about the 60s, have voted overwhelmingly for Democrats. And it has gotten us tangibles. It absolutely. I can just think of one thing, for example, Pell Grants. I wouldn't be in college. I wouldn't have been able to go to college as a high school dropout from a very poor family, except for Pell Grants and student loans. These are things that the Democratic Party has pushed. Some of you have children who get Head Start, get all kinds of things from the Democratic Party, and yet you're out here trashing the Democratic Party. So I think we need to vote overwhelmingly for the Democratic Party for the purpose of taking it over. Let's take it over. That's what we do. We take it. Since we all are not happy with what the Democratic Party should be doing for black people, let's take over the Democratic Party. Not sit home and say, well, if I vote the couch, I'm going to get the Democratic Party's attention. That's crazy. You think by sitting home, and many of you did, and not supporting Kamala Harris, you really hurt Kamala Harris? Really? Kamala's a millionaire. Her husband is a millionaire. They're going to be fine. Joe's a millionaire. You know who's really going to now hurt by not supporting Kamala? You. You. When Walmart destroys DEI programs, when other companies start laying off black folks, when police officers hit the streets with prosecutorial immunity, that ain't gonna do a doggone thing to Kamala Harris. It's gonna be many of you dealing with that. and me and my family and my cousins and so on. A little more Claude.
And the other one out there, you got Biden. Biden is weak. Biden has never done anything for black folk. You ask him, what are you going to do for black folk in terms of the principles of politics? He hasn't got one single thing he can offer to do and propose to do. Yet he'll go around these primaries.
Now, this is 2020. He said Biden is weak, and he went on to say that Biden didn't have a snowball's chance in hell to win. Well, who won? Biden won in 2020. And what did Biden do? A whole lot for black people. And a lot of that is because people did what apparently Claude didn't know they did, and that is a whole lot of black folks after that South Carolina primary, they said to Biden before it actually, if you want our votes, here are some things you got to do. They put tangibles on the table with Joe Biden. And that's why we got so much. Because they did exactly what Claude said. But apparently, he doesn't know they did it. Black people are not stupid. We know we need to get stuff for our votes. We're not stupid. Not most of us. A little bit more from Claude.
So what I'm saying to you, if I was voting right now in the primaries, and I don't vote, I'm never going to vote again until they start, someone to come up with doing something for black folk. And the only person I've heard say that we're going to do something is the guy right now, Michael Bloomberg rather, that's in there. He's the only one who's come out publicly and said, if I get elected to the president of the United States, I'm gonna do something for black folk. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna be very specific. If I get to become the president of the United States, I'm gonna try to make 1 million blacks millionaires. Now that's the kind of talk black folks should be listening to. And he says, and I'm gonna help rebuild their communities and get better schools for them. He's the only one. Mike Bloomberg is the only one I've heard in all my years in politics.
Okay, so let's talk about that a minute. You remember I told you earlier, remember when Claude said that the GOP, the Republican Party, ain't never going to do anything, has never, ever, because they are the old Democrats, they ain't ever, never, ever going to do anything for black people, the Republicans? Michael Bloomberg is a Republican. So, Michael Bloomberg, a Republican, whom Dr. Anderson said would never do anything for black people, yet he believes him. He believed that Michael Bloomberg was going to do something to help 1 million black people become millionaires. Really? And he was going to do that through the very party that Claude said would never do anything for black people. Really? That's not logical. Michael Bloomberg was attempting to play the black community. And do you remember when Bloomberg was mayor of New York City? He was the one who implemented stop and frisk that did such damage to the black community. So much so, a federal judge made the city of New York stop and frisk.
The case that put you, in the headlines was the case that challenged the constitutionality of the New York Police Department's stop and frisk policy. You wrote a 195-page decision concluding that the police department had resorted to a policy of indirect racial profiling in minority communities, and you ordered sweeping reforms in that policy and that a monitor be appointed to oversee the reforms. Is it accurate to say that you were appalled by what you saw going on in the police department?
It is accurate. The only thing I always like to correct when someone asks me is stop and frisk, if practiced correctly, is still legal and it still is being practiced, and that's fair as long as it's done right. What was appalling was the huge number of stops. It had hit a high of close to 700,000 stops in 2011 of innocent people overwhelmingly, we know this because there was no summons, there was no arrest, the people were just stopped and their life was interrupted, even if it was only interrupted for an hour and a half. That's long. I mean, if you were busy...
And they tended to be people of color.
Absolutely. And if you were on your way to this studio and somebody stopped you for an hour and a half for no reason, I think you'd be furious. I think you'd sue the next morning. And of course, some people did. But the practice, the policy as practiced, bred lack of trust in the community. The community was not respectful of the police anymore. There was a real tension between the police and the community. And so even the police department came to see, I think, and has certainly seen now, that if you want the help of the community to make things better and to police themselves and to work with the police to stop crime, because nobody's for crime, but then you can't do this. You can't be stopping people just because they look suspicious to you. And
so why was the NYPD conducting so many stop and frisk? Mostly, I guess, Black and Latino males, 9 out of 10 of whom had done nothing wrong. Why were they doing it?
Because I think the policy then, from the top down, is that they really believe that these are the people committing the crimes, and they're also the people who have the guns and the drugs, and if they're fearful that they're going to be stopped, then they'll leave their guns at home, and they won't carry the drugs, and you will reduce crime. That was the theory. Now, what we've now learned is that when we're down to 25,000 stops in this year, we're on track for 15 and 16 to have that number, crime is staying down. It hasn't made a difference. I saw figures for 16 just the other day. We're on track for a lower murder rate and a lower serious felony rate than we've seen in a long time. So it obviously didn't achieve what they thought it would. But I think they deeply believed it. These were people who were not evil. I mean, they believed what they were doing was a good method of fighting crime.
That was Michael Bloomberg. Yeah. Yeah, the same man that Claude believed would earnestly try to make 1 million people, 1 million black people, millionaires. Come on. Come on. We got to do better. We got to do better. Now, I'm at the end of this. Let me just give you a couple of things we got to do, a couple of solutions. One, we got to counter this disinformation. That's what this is. And that's why I'm speaking out. I did not want to really do this video and focus on Claude Anderson because I think his heart is in the right place. I don't know the man. I never met the man, never spoke with the man. So I'm not judging his motives, his heart. I don't know. I just know that a lot of what he said is not factual. And it's contradictory to other things he said. And some of it is not logical. With all due respect to another black man. And he and I both are up in age. He's older, I think he's older than me. But I feel like I have the credibility to challenge a lot of what he said. This thing about not voting ever again. Don't you take that advice. What has it gotten us? That's all you got to ask yourself. What has voting the couch gotten us, but in a deeper hole? And now we're in a really deep one. Because so many people are doing what Claude Anderson said that has been shared with you through many of these pro-black imposters. And I came up with that phrase because a lot of those pro-black imposters love to call people who encourage folks to vote for Democrats. They love to call us Democratic shields. I never heard the term, actually, until, I heard it on YouTube. Well, I said, okay. Or tethers, that's another one. So I said, okay, pro-black imposters. And to match the T word, turncoats. Turncoats. If blacks who say vote for Kamala or the Democrats, who again have done more for black people than the GOP, as Claude said, ever has and ever will, if they're tethers, then those pro-black imposters are also turncoats, which means, and this is a term that was used back in the early days of this country, it was when somebody would turn their coats inside out and start fighting for the other side. Because anyone who tells black people not to vote the couch, and let the GOP, whom Claude Anderson said would never do anything for black people, get into government and put all kinds of right-wing judges on the court and so forth and do all kinds of turning, rolling back silver. Anyone who advises black people to do that has turned their coat for the other side. I don't know if they mean to. I don't know. I don't know the motives. I don't know what's motivating them to say these things to black people. But I can't think of any scenario where black people should not vote. That is it. That's what I wanted to share with you today. All right? I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. I got it off my chest because I was teed when I got up here. I'm still teed. Because we got 4 years of pure craziness coming down the pipe. Anyway, remember, AMCA, Arise, Mobilize, Keep Advancing in Advance 2026. Go to our website, lljp.org/AMCA, because we are creating a resistance movement to MAGA. We will not stand by and watch them take us back. Just because Kamala lost doesn't mean the fight is over. Baby, it's just getting started. AMCA, AMCA, AMCA.